Thanks for everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there's two ways that you can actually help me continue the fight against bullying in the public schools. First, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, and you'll see the banner and that says subscribe, and all you have to do is just click on that. The second way that you can help, you can be a monthly sponsor as low as $4 per month, and in return, you're going to get a free weekly digital download of a track of mine or a song of mine from the CDs that I have out, and also a monthly digital download CD. Now this way, you're not just giving money away, but you're getting something in return. So all you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org, scroll down and click on the Patreon banner, and it's going to take you to get you or to give you some more information about that. So with no further ado, sit back and enjoy the next Bully Resistance Show.
Welcome, everyone, to the Bully Resistance Show with David Wells, nationally known smooth jazz artist, CEO and co-founder of the Chocolate Jazz Foundation, and the co-host of a 2-hour syndicated radio program called Chocolate Jazz Radio. Bully Resistance is a weekly 1-hour show that's a motivational, informative, and inspirational program. We will have interviews with musicians, actors, government officials, politicians, psychologists, counselors, and just average day citizens. Of course, the topics will include making right choices, never giving up desire, discipline, determination, bullying in public school, the workplace, and in your community, bully resistance and prevention, self-defense, jiu-jitsu, and current affairs, and much, much more. And if you're ready, we are. Here's your host, David Wells.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to another episode of the Bully Resistance Show. My name is David, and today we have a return guest and friend that was actually on the show a couple months ago before all this coronavirus and the government was shutting down. So at this time, I want to introduce back Luke on the Bully Resistance Show. Luke, thanks so much for coming back on, man.
Thanks for having me back on, Dave. I really appreciate it.
You know, I just want you to know this. As good as you did last time on the show, you were actually tied for the first and most listened. And I'm just thinking, this is just my advice, I'm thinking maybe you probably should need to start your own podcast. What do you think?
Maybe. It's always been a dream of mine to have one, so we'll see.
Oh, it doesn't take much. You know what, man? Since the last time we talked, did you ever think that we would go through something like this?
Honestly, no. I never thought something like this would happen. I've seen videos for years of experts and medical doctors saying, like, we are very exposed to a pandemic, and like viruses and bacteria and things like that can be very, very deadly to us, but we haven't really taken many precautions for that. And I think that might be due to just how busy and distracted we are in our everyday lives. We're not paying attention to those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but me personally, the first week when all the businesses were shutting down and all my future engagements and performances were being canceled, I was like in total disbelief. And for the first time ever, I didn't have a backup plan. I mean, I've actually for 20 years I was a sole provider for my wife and 2 kids, and as a musician. And usually I have my hands in a few pots, to keep the cash flow coming in just in case, I get a cancellation. And, it was just one of these things that, I had no control over. I couldn't do anything. And what was going through your mind when all the businesses were shutting down and you had no control whatsoever in what was happening?
I think a lot of people felt and were in the same situation you were in. They didn't have a plan ready just because it wasn't expected. So me personally, I was kind of shocked and worried how many people were going to be damaged by this, health-wise and financially. But I was pretty glad that we started taking precautions relatively early in comparison to other states. Now, I was lucky enough to have some money saved up from previous jobs, so I wasn't hit as difficult as some people were, but we're all struggling during this time.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but, one of many of my concerns in regards to everything that's going on today, with the testing, and then now we're starting to reopen the state, back up the economy. And my concern is having the government in control of my life. And what I mean by that, I was actually talking with Stephen Smith. Of course, for those that don't know, on the last episode, he's actually running for governor of the state of West Virginia. And not to get off on a tangent, but one of the things that I was liked about him when I was interviewing him, Luke, was he's so open-minded, and it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. He's really fighting for the citizens of West Virginia, and he really, honestly, I really think that he really is concerned about our needs and our frustrations that we're going through. And one of the things that I was talking to him about, there was a part of the CARES Act that they came out with, the Senate came out with or approved what you call a gig unemployment benefits. And, people that work for employers, they have this insurance for unemployment. But see, when you're self-employed and a subcontractor, you don't have anything. And so from the time that they actually approved this in the Senate, until the time that we were actually able to apply for the gig unemployment, I'm thinking it was probably close to 5 or 6 weeks before we were able to apply for the gig unemployment. And then I was in contact with Stephen, and he says, well, what I hear now, David, you have to be approved, and then once you're approved, then you have to wait even longer to get income. And, from this started until the time that you get money, you're looking at maybe 2.5 to 3 months. And it's just one of those concerns that I have, and just knowing that the government is in control. But anyway, what I was getting at is that he said, you know what, Dave, I think, if there was anybody that was in our shoes that were working for the government, believe me, things would have been up and running and money in people's pocket by now. All that being said, what concerns do you have with West Virginia on reopening, specifically on the economy? I'm not talking about the testing, but what concerns do you have about reopening of West Virginia?
Right. So first, let me address a few things you mentioned. So I agree with Stephen 100%. I think we're both on the same page here with regards to, we don't care about party. It's people over party. Neither of us care if somebody's a Democrat or Republican or an independent or Mountain Party. We're
right.
all just about finding solutions and talking to anybody and reaching out to all those people, then having them reaching back out to us, just because that's how ideas and plans are formed, is by talking to each other. And I also agree with you. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that people are having to wait months and months at a time to get these unemployment benefits that they were promised. You can't expect people to live that way when there's no money coming in.
Yeah.
And then in regards to testing here in Wood County, we need to just drastically increase testing. And that's the easiest and most simple way I can put it.
Right.
Because right now, the last numbers I checked, we had, I think, 39 confirmed cases in Wood County and 2 deaths. And so that's not too bad. State-wise, obviously, any deaths are too many, as Jim Justice has said over and over again.
Sure.
But when it comes down to it, there's a lack of testing that spans not only West Virginia, but the entire country. I'm more focused on West Virginia.
Right.
But so here in West Virginia, we've had 1,118 positive tests for COVID-19 so far. But we've tested only 2.5% of our population. So I don't see how Wood County and West Virginia would be ready to reopen when we still haven't tested 97% of the people in the state.
Yeah. But does that include most states, though? I mean, with the amount of testing? Or do you feel like there's other states that have about the same amount of testing or more?
I think there's a shortfall of testing throughout the entire country. So we hear every day from the media that we've tested, I think the last time I've heard was like 4 or 5 million people.
Right.
That's just not nearly enough when the country has 330 million.
Right. I mean, yeah, it is a small percentage, though.
There's no way to know how far the disease has spread throughout the population, and we're seeing estimates all the time where that the numbers could be 10, 20 times higher than are currently reported. Right.
You know, I have to mention this to you. When I was doing some research on testing, and I got sort of sidetracked and started doing a lot of research on South Korea because they've been said that they are the perfect role model in regards to this. I had no idea that South Korea has over 51 million people in the country, and they actually had one of the largest breakouts with COVID-19, and because they were aggressive with testing. Well, there were 3 things that they were aggressive with. They were aggressive with testing. They were aggressive with, I think, the contact tracing, and then they were able to protect the healthcare workers, the doctors and nurses, so that they can continue to work on people that have cases with the virus. Anyway, in a country that big, they've had only about 11,000 cases, and I think, Luke, if I'm right, maybe 240, 250, 60 people that have passed away, and almost 9,000, I guess, recovered. And I guess when we were talking about testing and how the lack of testing is involved right now, and that we need more testing, I think with South Korea, I think they have like 600 testing sites, maybe in place, maybe 80 drive-throughs, or maybe 80 or 100, and then I think they were able to right off the bat test maybe 20,000 people a day. So, do you feel that we're really behind? Do you feel like it's just not West Virginia is behind with the amount of testing, but do you feel like all the states are behind with testing? And then if so, who's to blame on that?
Right. So I do feel like not only West Virginia, but the entire country is behind on testing. Now, we might have tested more than everybody else in the world, but that doesn't really matter if we've only tested a few percent of our population. Now, back to South Korea. So there, the instance there is it's interesting. So, like you said, they have 50 million people or so.
Right.
But it's a very, very small area. It's like the size of Virginia. But you have that 50 million people in that tiny area.
Sure.
So that could go 2 ways. It could kind of go like it did in New York, where you have a large population in a very small area, so the outbreak spreads really quickly. Or they're able to test and contact trace more easily because the area is so small and confined. Now with South Korea, they had an outbreak of MERS in the past, I think in 2015. So they already had some of these like testing precautions in place on how to deal with these things. Mm-hmm. So they cleaned very heavily, like their cities and everything. They use contact tracing very, very heavily, even in some ways that definitely wouldn't be approved here,
right?
Because there's definitely some personal like privacy issues,
right?
With like saying who had the virus and then tracing everybody's movements with cameras and things like that. That stuff wouldn't fly here.
Hey, Luke,
I wouldn't advocate for that.
Luke, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I was talking to my wife about this, and do you feel that this contact tracing is what can I say? South Korea, I mean, is it like infringement on your privacy with contact tracing? I mean, because how they were doing it, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like through cell phones, where they were at, videos, that way. I mean, how do you feel about contact tracing? I know I didn't mention that to you, but I mean, do you feel that is, I'm
a huge fan of contact tracing. You absolutely need it to be able to contain the virus.
Okay, so what's your definition of contact tracing then?
So the very first part, let me start at the very beginning. So The foundation of contact tracing is testing people. So the very first part of contact tracing is you have to be able to test somebody to see if they have the virus.
Right.
If they test positive for it, then you ask them where they've been, who they've been in contact with. Now, obviously, it's going to be hard for some people to remember all the places they've been, who they've had contact with. Hopefully, it's easier now that we've been quarantined for a while.
Oh, I see. Okay.
But there is going to be some human error in that. So that's where I think there are some of the programs implemented in South Korea that could be used without violating people's personal privacy.
Right.
Such as like saying a person who tested positive for coronavirus was at this location at this time, but not say who it was or anything like that. Just to let people know that this area could be contaminated and they could avoid it for a couple of days until that virus has time to die. Now, with checking people's movements on like security cameras and things like that, that I'm not a fan of.
Okay.
That I'm not a fan of.
I think it was like last week on Morning Edition, and they interviewed Mike Pence, and or they were having an interview with two people, and then they mentioned Mike Pence. But anyway, they said that Mike Pence has repeatedly said that there are enough coronavirus tests for states across the country that want to begin lifting social distancing or start reopening their economies in phase one. Here's my concern. You can read this a couple ways. If Mike Pence says that we have plenty of tests for America across the country, and then we're talking about West Virginia only testing, I don't know, a real small percentage, just not West Virginia but other states. I'm thinking, there's a fine line here. I mean, somebody's wrong. I don't know if Mike is saying that we have enough tests for states that are going through phase one, or if he's saying we have enough tests for anybody to go ahead and take. What's your read on that? Do you think that there is probably not enough tests for everyone across the country, or do you feel like it's more for like phase one only?
I mean, that's a great question. Personally, I know many people who have been very sick and wanted to get tested and they couldn't.
See, that's my thing.
I've seen stories and heard from other experts and people who say we don't have nearly enough testing. We have to keep going.
Right.
So I don't know if he's just being optimistic or trying to just make us all feel good, like it's all going to be okay, which there's definitely a time and place for that.
Sure.
I'm not so sure right now is that time. I think people prefer honesty because we get enough lying and deceit from our politicians and media as it is. So, honestly, I don't see the testing. I hope it's there, but I just don't see it.
One of the good things that I read was that just maybe a few days ago, Senator Manchin said that he passed, or that he has made like a $5.5 million for testing for the state of West Virginia for anyone who wants one, which I thought was real positive in regards to testing if you're concerned about being tested. Real quickly, I want to go ahead and switch directions here, and I want to talk about voting, the absentee voting. We all know that the elections in West Virginia was scheduled back to June 9th. And on the last podcast, I was talking with Stephen and what we can do to win voters' trust. Now I'm just talking. When I mention this, I'm just referring to Wood County. In regards to Wood County, from the March of 2016 to March of 2020, there was a decrease of 2,500, I guess, registered Democrat voters, but an increase of 2,000 registered Republican voters. With you or with anybody that's running, what's your plan to win voters over, to on your side or for any candidate? How can you? What's people's plan, I guess?
So first, we obviously never want to see a decline in the number of people participating in the political process.
Right.
That's just not good for anybody. We want as many people as possible to vote, participate, share their ideas, get involved, and just contribute in general.
Sure.
But first and foremost, I'm an independent. I signed up on the Democratic ticket because I typically see myself aligning more with them on social issues that our younger generation tends to really care about, such as LGBTQ plus rights, climate change, cannabis legalization, education for all, and things like that.
Sure.
But having said that, I think something that's really, really positive and that we can look forward to in the future is that what I'm seeing from especially the younger generation and even more so older folks also is that they don't care about the parties at all. We might get into arguments with each other and throw around Democrat, Republican terms, but when it comes down to it and you sit down and talk to people, they really just want solutions for the problems, and they don't care about all the political nonsense.
Right.
Because most of it's coming from lies from the politicians, lies from the media, and like I said earlier, we don't want that. We just want the truth, we want the facts, and we want our problems solved in a way that's beneficial for everybody. And I think the way to do that is just to talk to and to listen to as many people as possible, regardless of what party you're a part of.
Right. One of the things about this year's elections, before the coronavirus and then the closing of the economy, there were certain, I guess, restrictions in regards to the absentee voting. Now because of the coronavirus situation, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, I guess all voters in West Virginia are eligible to vote. And do you feel like the absentee voting will affect, I guess, the voting process or the amount of voters?
It'll definitely have an effect, but I think the effect we're going to see is from the pandemic and the coronavirus and fear surrounding that, and not so much the absentee voting. I think what we would really need to focus on is that if we did not have this absentee voting widely available to everybody like we do,
right,
that the turnout in voting would drastically drop.
Okay.
And that would be infringing upon people's right to vote. So I think it's definitely necessary that we have the absentee voting in place currently.
Okay.
And that's been done for our military personnel overseas, in the past, people with disabilities, students who don't currently reside at home. All these different people can vote by absentee ballot. There's also 2/3 of states currently that give you the option to vote by absentee ballot. So it's not something we should be scared of or worried about.
That was my next question. If you feel like the candidates are concerned now that there's absentee voting available, so you're not really concerned.
I'm not personally concerned, no, because I want to be able to give people the option to vote as easily as possible. Obviously, we have to make sure there's no fraud, no cheating, anything like that. But we've seen very few instances of that. In the last 20 years, there's been 143 convicted cases of voter fraud in the entire United States, and that it's way less. You're way more likely to get struck by lightning than you are to see an instance of voter fraud.
So Luke, so the requirements or the qualifications for absentee voting, so it's really anybody now, right? It's not like it was. So anybody that actually, okay, so when do you have to actually register to do absentee?
Right. So the date to register for the primary election is May 19th.
Okay.
And then the final day to register for the general election is October 13th. So the rule is it's 21 days prior to the election is when voter registration is cut off here in West Virginia.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to know about the absentee voting?
There actually is one more important thing. So if you are a first-time voter, so you are either 17, 18, or this is your first time ever voting, and you vote by absentee ballot, then you'll need to send in some form of identification with your ballot that has your name and address on that document. So it can be an ID, it could be like a utility bill or a bank statement. Any of those things would work.
Just like a copy of something? License?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. One last thing that I want to talk about, and I really had no idea how severe this is. I mean, so many of us, we go on our days, our lives, and we drive down the highway and then we'll see somebody riding a bicycle with a pack on their back, or we see, a few kids and their parents walking down the road, and it's homelessness. And, this is something that you wanted to talk about because you felt that, this should be a concern and we should address it. And I was doing a little bit of research, and the Wood County, I guess, is like third in the state with most homelessness. What do you feel are the contributing factors, I guess, of homelessness in Wood County or even in West Virginia? Do you think it's like substance abuse? Is it relational? Is it they're just stranded here? What's your thoughts?
I think it's a multitude of factors. I think it's substance use. That's definitely a contributing factor. We're continuing to see an increasing number of individuals who suffer from substance use disorder, and then they lose their children. So those children are homeless. Those people who are suffering from the substance use disorder, a lot of times they end up homeless as well. I think it's education, just a lack of quality education.
Okay.
I think it's, and also the thing that hurts me the most, I think it's a lack of compassion for people. I think there's a really bad stigma around homelessness, and that's something we need to end. You can drive like across the Memorial Bridge going to Belfry.
Right.
You'll see homeless people standing out there asking for money, and we're encouraged to not help these people, which I think is the absolute last thing we should be doing.
Yeah.
I think we should be using every resource and every ability we have to be trying to lift these people up and give them a better life. And then I think what we're missing is that when we do those things and we actually help these people, it creates a better world for everybody. So currently with the homelessness, that's a huge public health issue.
Right.
Because they don't have anywhere to social distance. They might not have anywhere to wash their hands or to perform proper hygiene.
Right.
And then also if we can find homes and living situations for these people, then that's going to decrease crime rates, which lets officers worry about things that are much, much more important than why somebody is sleeping on the street at night. There's so many different advantages to helping out the homeless population and just helping everybody.
I was reading an article in the paper, and there's a few of these nonprofit organizations for homelessness. Of course, you got Salvation Army, and they a couple years ago they built or renovated a new facility where you're able to go ahead and sleep overnight. Then you have another nonprofit that is called House to Homes, and they were doing an interview with these both organizations, and they said, that there's an increase in homelessness, and I was sort of curious. I've been hearing, through other people, and I should have researched this a little bit, but they're opening up these facilities in the Middle Ohio Valley. They're facilities for recovered addicts, for the addicts to come and to recover. One of the things I was wanted to go ahead and mention was I was hearing this through other people about these facilities that take in people that have these addictions for recovery, and after the recovery, they're sort of stranded here. So I'm sort of curious if you feel, have you heard anything about these facilities? One is in Vienna, the other one's in Parkersburg. Have you heard anything about those facilities at all? And then we'll go ahead and move on to something else.
Not in great detail. Now, I know when I was working for the Oriana House over in Marietta, which is a substance use residential treatment facility, there was multiple different homeless shelters that we were in contact with, and that would absolutely offer assistance to people, whether that be housing. There's food banks that are available, and there's all kinds of different resources available to these different populations of people. But a lot of the times, the problem is that they don't know how to access them, or they don't have people helping them access them. So I think one of the things we need to do to address this homelessness crisis is we have to get a lot more case managers involved in assisting these people.
Yeah, exactly. I think so. A lot of the listeners know that during the school year, I spend a lot of my time going into the public schools, and I fight against bullying, and maybe talk about making right choices. And I remember I was I think it was in Monroe County in Ohio, and but anyway, I was at Monroe High School, and I was about there was a few minutes before I was going to start my assembly. And I was in the office with the principal. His name was Joe, and I'll just leave it at that. And he was sharing a story about he has 3 sisters that go to high school at Monroe High School. And he goes, what's sad, David? He goes, we know that bullying is a big problem, but poverty is also a big problem. And he says, I have these 3 sisters and their mom that live in their car. And I'm thinking, that just blew me away. But so many times I hear, as I go into these schools in West Virginia, the poverty is such a big problem, like you were saying. And I was really curious in regards to homeless. I read there was I think on Stephen's website there was over 1,200 people homeless, and that won't have a home to stay tonight. But then, in 2016 to 17, I was told, or I saw where there was 7,000 students homeless, and then in 2018 and 19, there was over 10,000 students that were homeless, and I was just baffled about that, and I'm just thinking, well, what has caused that? What's your thoughts on that?
It's a great question, Dave. So what I've seen, the numbers, just like you said, there's over 1,200 homeless individuals, over the age of 18 in West Virginia. And that included over 100 veterans, 200 families, and over 60 young people that have really no place to go. Now, like you said, also there's over 10,000 students in West Virginia who they have lack of housing, and they're still considered homeless. So they lack a regular or adequate nighttime residence.
Okay.
And that didn't include people who were in foster care, but it did include people who were doubled up with family or friends, or they're living in a shelter or a hotel.
Oh.
And honestly, I think you already hit on it. What the biggest problem with homelessness is, the biggest cause, I think it's poverty. It's 100% poverty.
Yeah.
And I think that's an issue that's it's multifaceted, and it stems back many years to West Virginia kind of being ravaged by these out-of-state corporations and decreasing workers' rights and having all that money just flow out of state instead of staying in the pockets of the West Virginia residents.
Man, yeah. There's so many issues. I mean, it's just I'm this time around for the voting, I'm more excited this time around than I've ever have. And I don't know, and I think it really started when I first heard you talking, at the academy, about politics. And that's when I'm thinking, gosh, man, I should have you. And then I talked with you, and then I was doing some research, and then I had the opportunity to talk with, Stephen. And I'm just thinking, you know what, gosh, if people would really dive into this just a little bit, it would just really just open their eyes on a lot of things. And I think that the whole bipartisan thing would just dissolve and not, like you said, don't worry about the party, but my gosh, let's worry about the issues at hand and then to fix the problem. But anyway, listen, man, I wanted to talk to you. One of the things that me and you have in common that we spend hours on each week, of course, until the coronavirus, is jiu-jitsu. And, and I don't know about you, but, my situation, I want the academies to start opening up again. I mean, because it really leaves a void in my life. I mean, it's just like, there's nothing to do. I mean, there's nothing that you can do to change things. And I don't know if you miss jiu-jitsu as much or you're probably more focused on, the campaign now. What have you been spending your time on?
So I'm 100% with you. I miss jiu-jitsu very, very bad. Jiu-jitsu and politics are two of my favorite passions for sure.
Do you think
I'll train every once in a while here at home, but I haven't got too much training in, honestly, since it started.
I know. And what do you think has to, and this is just between me and you on a personal level, because a lot of people don't take jiu-jitsu. I guess my biggest concern in going back at all is not to get infected. And, but see, all this new data keeps on coming out in regards to the coronavirus and how many people die and how many people had it and everything else. But see, my problem is you, first of all, my age. Matter of fact, I want you to know that I'll be 55 tomorrow.
Oh, happy
I know.
Birthday, Dave.
I know. But anyway, my concern is it's not getting the virus, but my son, he's on like 9, 10, 11 different medications because of his lungs, that if there is a chance to get the virus and to get to him, there's just no way I can do that. And I'm just thinking, I can't do anything about it. I don't know if I can even, I know that, they're making some type of arrangements where, you have a very minimal amount of people, you keep with the same training partner, you make sure things are clean, and you make sure that you don't, swallow somebody's spit, because they're like on top of it. But man, it's a concern. I think we all have, but I don't know what you need to see for you to train, because you're so young and it probably won't affect you. Are you concerned at all? Or are you just like, whenever they open, I'm going to go?
No, I'm very concerned, and I think your concerns are also very, very valid. Also, your situation is slightly different than mine, just because where I'm living, it's just me and my fiance.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about who's really, I don't have to worry about being around her because she's not immunocompromised, but I do have family members that are immunocompromised that I like seeing, and I've been able to see them a lot less or not at all since this started.
Right.
So some of the things that I would like to see before we really get back into jiu-jitsu would absolutely be testing. Yeah. So my biggest concern is, my biggest irritation is right now that me and you could both be immune, and we might not. So say we've already had the virus. We don't know because we haven't been tested. we could go into jiu-jitsu and be perfectly fine and not spread to anybody else, but we don't know that just because we can't get tested.
And you're talking about the antibodies?
Now, the antibody test, they haven't really perfected them yet, and as far as I know, they're not too widespread.
Okay.
But hopefully we'll see that in the future, and that could definitely tell if somebody had it previously and then they aren't still infectious.
Oh.
So, like you said, I want tests available for everybody so we know if we can go to jiu-jitsu and not infect other people and not bring it back home with us.
Right.
I was glad that they were going to have us just work with one person at a time.
Right.
So as to not spread it like back and forth. Like me and Whitney can obviously work together because we're home together all the time. So that'd be perfectly fine.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I mean,
when I go, I will 100% wear a mask for the foreseeable future until I can get tested.
See, now that's a good idea. I didn't think we would be able to wear a mask.
I don't know why. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to. I don't know why we wouldn't be. I don't think Mike or Jason have a problem with that. And then also I heard they were going to be spraying the mats down prior to kids class, prior to the adult class after the kids class was done. And that kids class would end about 6:45 instead of 7. So we give kids and adults time to get out of there, and then the next class can come in without any contact.
Yeah, I think when gyms make all these preparations to make sure they sanitize a place, I think that says a lot, of the owners. Hey, Luke, how can people get a hold of you and keep updated on what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Facebook, Luke Winters for West Virginia House of Delegates, District 10. I'm on Twitter. I have a funny Twitter handle. It's from old college days.
Okay.
Winterfresh69. My Instagram, LukeWinters25. You can email me, LukeWinters82@yahoo.com. And then if you really need to get hold of me right now, you can call me or text me. My phone number is 304-834-9054.
That's your cell phone?
Yep.
Oh my gosh, you and Steve, man, you guys are nuts. Jeez, criminy. But I think it's good though. Well, that's about all we
like talking to the people.
I know, man. That's where it's at. Well, that's about all we have on the Bully Resistance Show. Before we go, I want to let everyone know again how you can help me fight against bullying by bringing awareness. And one of the ways that you can do that is just share this show on social media. It's either your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Secondly, if you haven't subscribed to the Bully Resistance Show, it doesn't cost you anything. All you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org and click on the banner that says subscribe, and all you receive is just a notice about the new show available. And then finally, you can be a monthly supporter as low as $4 a month, and depending on your sponsorship, you can either receive, either Song of the Week or a CD of the Month, digital download. But all you have to do is just go to my website at www.davebond.org and click on the Patreon banner. So until next time, thanks for listening.